Welcome to Solo, the single person's guide to a remarkable life. Your host, a behavioral scientist and bachelor, talks to leading experts and successful singles about living solo and living well. Travel more, make things, sleep in when you want to. Here's the playbook for the person who is unapologetically unattached. Now, please welcome Dr. Peter McGraw.
Welcome back. This is a two-part episode that features a conversation with two men, two creatives, two friends, and friends of mine. The first is Chester C., a musician who has been nominated for 6 Streamy Awards, including a win for Best Original Song. He has sold more than 2 million downloads of original music without the help of a label, and was one of the first 100 people to garner over 1 million subscribers on YouTube. Chester lives a remarkable life, one that seems cut out of a movie, but without the ego. The second is Darwyn Metzger, a former star of America Now and an Emmy Award-winning broadcast journalist. He's the founder and CEO of Phantom, a digital marketing and social media strategy firm. Darwyn juggles secret projects from brands, studios, political campaigns, and celebrities, including Apple, Stanford, Nike, DirecTV, Warner Brother, Fox, NBC Universal, and BBC America. A dear friend of mine, Darwyn has been a nonstop supporter of Solo. Our conversations have encouraged me to think even bigger. Thank you, Darwyn. I use this conversation to gather feedback about the project and to discuss well-being and friendship. Importantly, we talk about love among male friends, hence the name of the episode. As you know, I host a private Solo community which you can be part of by applying at petermcgraw.org/solo. There you can get access to extra material, including bonus material from today's conversation where we discuss alcohol, and not in a good way. Okay, I hope you enjoyed the episode. Let's get started. Welcome, Chester.
Hey, thanks for having me. How's it going?
Good. Welcome, Darwyn.
Hey, Pete.
So this is one of my more loosely planned solo episodes. I did that not because I've become lazy, but rather I know not to overplan with the two of you.
This feels like there's a lot of subtext directed towards Chester.
It was a little more Chester focused. So I kind of envision this sort of like we're going to sample from different areas. And in many ways, I'm using you two.
Cool.
Yeah,
Use me
like
away.
That. Wow.
Because I've been working through various ideas and I want to get your feedback on it. But I don't have to say this to Darwyn. Don't hold back. Darwyn has been kind of with me from like the very early stages of the Solo project. Like I'm sure I talked to him about it before I even wrote the one pager. And he's been paying attention. I've subjected him to many conversations and looked for his advice.
Yeah, he wanted to call this Stag.
Originally, it was men only.
Mm-hmm.
It was male focused.
So boring.
I know. Thankfully, I pivoted. The feedback on that has been overwhelmingly positive. Although we are going to talk about some men's issues. And I have gotten feedback from my listeners that they have particularly enjoyed when I've gotten a group of guys together to talk. And that has happened pretty rarely. And you guys are much more charming than the previous group, so no pressure.
Wow.
So I want to just run through some ideas for you, but beforehand, I'd like to get, I guess I would say to you, what are your thoughts and what are the improvements? What are the tweaks? Or anything else you want to give me feedback on?
If we talk long enough, will this be a 2-part episode? Just think about it, Pete. Just think about it.
I feel you're more equipped to answer that question.
But I think there's some benefit in having both someone who's had a lot of exposure and then someone who's had brief exposure.
So I'll jump in then. I think what's happened now is that you have found an audience that really believes in this, whereas in the beginning of the process, you didn't know. Mm-hmm. So you were just experimenting. You were throwing a bunch of different lines out in the water, and I think you see a formula that works, which is you hone in on a few specific topics that you're definitely bleeding edge on when it comes to non-ethical monogamy, or ethical non-monogamy.
That's a
that was the opposite. I think you realize that when you lay down that blueprint, because there are so few other people talking about the subject in a high integrity, high-minded way. I just think it's very clear that you have product market fit. I still like the fact that you allow yourself freedom to explore weird little nooks and crannies. You'll touch on, we did an episode, I don't know what it was for you, maybe it was episode 20, where we talked about entrepreneurship.
Mm-hmm.
I think the thing that I think is toughest for you is if you're not the world's foremost expert, you're one of the world's foremost experts on this topic. And so because this podcast is often you interviewing somebody who, in the case of me and Chester, are much less of experts, or we have, a much weaker expertise than you do, I think it's tough to decide, are you going to showcase our thoughts and you're just here to sort of serve us layups? Or are you going to be the one who's going to lay out how you see things?
Mm-hmm.
And I think, I'm not sure that you have concluded that yet, but I think, and maybe you don't need to, maybe it's just going to be a mix of both. But I think that's tough because I think a lot of podcasts are either, it's a Joe Rogan who knows nothing about the topic and he's just there to ask questions as best as he can, or it's somebody who this is their world that they live and breathe. And I think you're sort of the tweener where you're trying to do both.
Yeah, I sense that tension. Occasionally I get feedback, I would have liked to hear the guest a bit more.
And then you say, but I'm more qualified than that guest.
and sometimes what it is I've done a ton of prep, a ton of research. Sometimes I'm more prepared, oftentimes more prepared than they are. And so I do a lot of editorializing, and then I often have a goal. Like, I want to make sure these things are covered. And then there are times where I feel very comfortable taking the more traditional kind of interviewer standpoint with it. But it is a very real tension. And I think I do sometimes feel guilty that I editorialize a little too much.
Do you feel guilty that you're wearing shorts right now? Do you think your audience would appreciate you wearing shorts on the clock?
I'm embarrassed that people know that I'm wearing shorts, in part because I almost never wear shorts.
I know.
Only really when I'm in the gym or at the beach.
And you have good thighs, but still, I'd rather you wear pants.
Yes, I did it. I normally would not do this, but I'm among friends. I'm going to leave that in. Actually, I'm not going to cut that out. Middle-aged men should not wear shorts in public.
Absolutely
I feel strongly about
Absolutely
that.
Wait, am I middle-aged? Are we middle-aged?
This is useful for people to know. So you guys are late 30s, yes?
We're both 38.
Whoa. Yeah, I know.
Just, whoa, what do you mean late 30s? It doesn't get much later, 39. That's as much later as we get.
I literally had a moment last night where it dawned on me. I was like, you're 40. You're essentially,
On
you're
the
right
cusp.
there. You're right there. You relate to what it is to have lived for 40 years, basically. And that just blew my mind last night.
Though you
I don't know
don't-
why I just had this thought.
Not really, though, because we don't
But
have
if you
kids.
know Chester, you know that he is not. First of all, you're on this podcast. You're not living the typical 40-year-old's life. You're not married
No.
with kids
No.
at the moment. Well, I will ask you this: like, from outside, you're now on a podcast that seeks to celebrate and destigmatize single living.
Yes.
How do you feel about that?
I guess, I don't know. It's something that I put a lot of thought into, I guess, because I am 38 and I am single. I'm not married. And I've grown up thinking that was always, I would be, at this point, I thought I would have kids. I would be married and I would have kids. And I think that it's always in the background for me. The thought of that was supposed to be where I'm at right now. And I don't know, I was talking about this the other day. I think that there's something about just in general, having a wife and kids is a way of supplying a lot of purpose for somebody.
Mhm.
A lot of purpose.
Too much purpose, Chester?
I don't know about too much purpose, but
No, I think Chester, you still want to have a wife and a family.
I do.
I think, Chester and I were similar where we were raised that it's just expected you're going to get married and you're going to have kids. I think the difference between Chester and where I'm at is I'm open to it, but I still think it is for you in a sense. It's almost like a mission that you do really believe in finding your partner and building a family.
I think so, but I do question that because there's a lot of things that we are just, it's ingrained in us because of our culture and because it's what you're told, it's what you see everywhere you look. And so I do question that, but I agree. As I've questioned it, I do come out the other side of that feeling like, no, I truly do like the idea of having a traditional monogamous relationship with somebody and creating humans and making those humans as fucking great as possible. Yeah, I'm very much interested. In fact, to be honest with you, sometimes when I really think that's the only major last thing in my mind of boxes getting checked. Most of the things like little goals, like career goals, all those things, a lot of those have been checked for me in a weird way.
Yeah, you've had success early on.
Well, enough success to fulfill my version
Yes.
of those being achieved. Like those goals were achieved in my mind, whatever that means to me, that, yeah, those have been achieved. And so, yeah, it does seem to, so maybe, I don't know, it's an interesting podcast to be on for me because I'm almost a little bit on the opposite side of it. I do want a wife.
Yeah, and I don't actually. These are not. You're not on the opposite side. The way that I think about this is, every married person was at one point single, and many of them will be single again, whether they like it or not. And so we should create a world in which being single is just seen as equivalent, equal to the married life, so that people, A, don't feel less than, and B, don't feel like they have to do it in order to be worthy in the eyes of others. So where it really just ends up being a choice, an equal choice in that sense. So your presence here is really not at odds with the mission of the podcast in any way.
No, I think there's something about the companionship though, that there's something about, I don't know how to put this. Like, I think like loneliness is, I mean, that's where I think most people go to a really dark place.
Mm-hmm.
And I think there is something about having somebody and making a commitment with them that says, look, we're going to make this work. We're going to be there for each other. We're going to take care of each other as we grow old. There is a fear, I think, that I have of growing old and not having somebody around that loves and takes care of me as I become weaker and less capable of taking care of myself. Like, doing that with somebody is very different than doing it alone in my mind.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that part of being married and having kids is, it fulfills that fear, or like it keeps that, prevents that from being a fear that I deal with.
So what are you waiting for?
Well, I haven't met any, it's what is it? It's like the paradox of choice. It's,
You know what your problem is, Chester? You're too handsome.
yeah.
You are. You're too handsome. You're going to always pick of whatever type of woman you want, and I think that makes it harder to really lock in on someone.
Chester's not just handsome; he's also charismatic,
super
and talented.
charming. Oh my god!
Oh, guys, you guys want to get married?
Yeah, no, I think that makes it harder for people.
Well, it simultaneously makes it easier and harder.
Right.
There's a whole bunch of guys who have the opposite problem, which is they can't attract someone despite their best efforts because their best efforts aren't good enough.
This is, to me, the worst kept secret, or maybe the best kept secret is probably more apt in society, is that like bottom 80% of men, there's not a single woman interested in them. If a woman marries someone that's in the bottom 80% of men, they are truly settling. But if you are Chester and you're not only in the top 20%, but you're probably in the top, 1 or 5% or whatever, you have 100% of women competing for your attention. So you have simultaneously all these men who there's nobody who desires them. And then you have this disproportionate amount of women who are trying to chase down somebody like Chester. And I have to imagine that makes it exponentially harder for you to be like, well, whoever I have right now is going to be more than enough. And let me just like double down and dive into this relationship when you're like, well, there's maybe some other women that might be interesting coming over the corner or coming around the corner soon.
Hey, that's very flattering you say, but I don't know.
I don't feel that way.
Hey, look, I feel like I should be the one laying down, and you guys I feel like we're in my therapy session right now. I need to like lay down on the couch.
No, but these are big. These are big questions. What's interesting is without even listening to what the words are, your tone changed as you started talking about this topic. Like it felt very weighty.
Well, because I don't know. I don't know the answer to a lot of this, but I will say I think I was secretly engaged, I guess, at one point. Like I never talked about it. No one knows about it. Doesn't matter, whatever. But I had reached a point in my mind where I'd found someone, and we had thought, we're going to do this. This is.
How long ago was this?
Well, maybe I shouldn't say, just out of protection.
Sure.
Even though if you know me, if I asked you, it wouldn't be hard to figure out. But anyway, I
have a lot of questions for you offline. A lot of questions.
So, but we were engaged, and I don't think since that relationship I've dropped my walls back down and have really truly let myself even fall for someone. I kid you not. I just wrote a song about this, about not saying that I like a girl, because I feel like a 14-year-old boy using the words "I like a girl." But I started to like this girl, and I just kind of decided, I don't know, I don't know. I didn't pick up right away that it would be reciprocal necessarily, and I bailed on even the pursuit of it. And And I think I was protecting myself because it was one of those moments where I feel like I could potentially actually really start to crush, whatever those words are, have feelings, and then be victim to that not going the way that I want to. There is still that lingering inside of me. And I'm sure that you can relate, Darwyn, but
100%.
I think that's a big portion of it, to be honest with you. Over the last few years of finding someone and really like diving in and letting go. Like letting go is the hard part.
But Darwyn, you have a story. You were not so secretly engaged.
Yeah, no, I feel like probably a lot of similar parallels to what Chester just said. Yeah, my engagement was not a secret. And, I think like you, Chester, it was a really important relationship that I had went all in on. And when things didn't work out, I felt really apprehensive about putting myself out there that way. I didn't get married and you didn't get married either. But Chester, I don't know if you feel the same way, but I think I'm a divorcee. I know I'm not literally one, but I don't see what's so different between me and a relationship that lasted almost 9 years than someone who was married for 9 years. We lived together.
Sure.
We had
so your lives were entwined.
Fully entwined. Sure. And to untangle them was exhausting and painful and arduous. And this is done under, I think, relatively amicable circumstances. So if somebody didn't have amicable circumstances, I can't imagine what it was like to go through what you and I have gone through. But I find that I just don't see why I want to put myself through that unless it gets to the point where I feel so excited and energized by the process, which is why I'm very open-minded to finding that partner. And I'm seeing someone now that certainly could go down that road with me, but I don't think I have it as a check off item any longer. Like I did check this item off my list and it didn't work out for me and it didn't make me happy. And so I think I will be happy independent of being married. And I don't think I could ever rely on that sort of relationship to make myself feel fulfilled or happy. And by the way, at some point in here, Peter, I hope you get to insert 30 seconds of Chester's I Like a Girl song. It feels like that's a...
Oh, that'd be nice to do.
That would be a nice little preview moment, Chester. Sorry to put you on the spot, as I like to do.
I say I don't like you, 'cause I'm scared that it might hurt. If this love is not returned, you'll disappear. So I say I don't like you, 'cause at least I know you'll stay. Just keep a few words safe from your ears. I adore you. I adore you.
I think that the children thing has more weight than the marriage thing for me.
Because would you co-parent with a woman and not marry her?
Well, without naming, just not that long ago, this girl, we had,
Sexy time?
I'm like, I hope my mom's not listening. No, like she's like, my son doesn't have sex. No, I'm just kidding. No, so I had sex with this real life woman, and
we're not talking about the metaverse here, folks.
By the way, this is a
flesh.
very open-minded podcast. If it wasn't a real life woman,
she made a joke. She made a joke, and where she was like, "I hope, she's like, I hope you didn't get me pregnant." It was lighthearted. She kind of just made a joke about it, but I genuinely, my reaction was like,
would that be so bad?
Yeah, I was like, whatever. Like if you're okay with it, then I would be okay with it. I mean, I'd be like, oh, that's a new chapter of this life, and that child would be. I can't give too many details.
Does part of you think that's the only way it's going to happen for you, where it just sort of sneaks
that's a strong question. You can see Darwyn's background in television and news with that question.
Hold on, repeat the question.
Do you think that that's the only way you're going to have a kid, is if it just sort of happens unplanned and there's no pressure and no agenda and it just happens?
I don't know. I don't know if that's what I think is the only way that it's going to happen. I think it's likely that it happens that way. It almost seems like at this point it's more likely that it happens that way. But that's, the girl that I'm thinking of right now, even though it matters that the person that I'm thinking of is a very well put together human being, very intelligent, like would be a good mom. Like those parts matter. And, I am, sexually active guy. Not every girl is. I would categorize that way, and I don't think I would feel this necessarily the same.
In this particular connection, the prospect of that happening did not terrify you in the way that it would terrify me.
No, it did not terrify me. There's a little bit.
And actually, you found it a little bit spicy.
Yeah, there was a little bit of
excitement. Yeah, I see. So one thing, I chuckled earlier when Darwyn was talking, and it might have sounded insensitive, but the reason I chuckled was I was remembering how far down the path that he was with his relationship. And to his credit, he was very good at this relationship. They had asked me if I would do the ceremony.
I remember. Yeah.
And I remember being asked and being incredibly flattered by this, and then saying, you know how I feel about marriage. And I don't remember exactly the logic, but it was like, you know us well. And I was supportive of it. I was perfectly prepared to do that. Hence, that was my...
I still have a clear image in my head of exactly what I pictured that day was going to look like and what you were going to look like.
Mm-hmm.
And I can picture seeing Chester in the crowd, and I know exactly what it was going to be. But thank you, by the way, for being gracious and being open to doing that, given your relationship with marriage.
As I said, I'm not anti-marriage. I just think it's overprescribed.
God bless you.
Yes.
You need Bill Maher on your podcast.
I would like, if you can help me get him, let's do it.
You see the way he
So Bill, if you're listening, if you want to go ahead and just tweet Peter.
There's a whole list of people. I've been trying to get Henry Rollins. I'd love to get Whoopi Goldberg. There are actually a lot of folks. It's not the 20-something, 30-something celebrity crowd. It's the 40, 50, 60 celebrity crowd that is surprisingly pro-single or solos.
Mm-hmm.
In that sense. And it's
it makes sense.
List.
They've either themselves went through messy divorces, or they've just observed so many unhappy people who may get divorced, or even worse, stay unhappily married.
Yes.
And then they realize, well, wait a second, why did that person have to be married?
Yes.
Yeah, I see that.
So you've already touched on a few of the things that I wanted to go into, but both of you recognize something that I think is actually healthy. And that is that an escalator relationship, as I call it, a traditional relationship, conventional relationship, obviously has great rewards, right? Is something that is exciting. And so to your point, Chester, you have a companion, you have someone you can lean on, especially when times are difficult, or even times when times are lean. And in your case, Darwyn, there's a lot of growth. You learn a lot about yourself. And you improve as a person, both because of the good times and the bad times. I can say this very comfortably, Darwyn, you're a much better person in many ways than you were 10 years ago because of that relationship. Not because you needed the beast tamed in any way. That's more of a Chester thing. At this moment. But you also recognize the risks. And I think that in some ways, there's not enough conversation around the risks of relationship. The heartbreak, the financial risks, the abuse, and so on. Like that, it's not always a rom-com. Right?
Look, I actually think it's probably healthy that people are so optimistic, but we know that people are often overly optimistic about their future. There was a really dumb banking commercial. It was like a Fidelity banking commercial, and basically gave people, I think, blue stickers for good things and yellow stickers for bad things. And they said, okay, walk us through your timeline of your past. And it was like 50-50 good things and bad things. And then they had them go out in the future. What is your timeline moving forward?
That's clever.
And it was just positive things. People realize if they look in hindsight, like, wow, a lot of good and bad happened. Mm-hmm. But when people think in a forward manner, most people, most of the time, just see the positives, and they're not thinking about the negative trade-offs that might happen as well.
Yes. Yeah. And this is fascinating. So this is called optimism bias. And it's really interesting because it happens at the individual level. So people think their future is going to be better. But if you ask them about the future in general, they think it's going to be worse. The world's going to shit, but my future is very bright. Mm-hmm. And to your point, Darwyn, I think it is, they call it a bias, the behavioral scientists who study it. I don't fully see it as a bias in the following way is it gets us out of bed in the morning.
I think it's one of the keys to survival. I think especially if you just think about generations ago, waking up in the middle of the ice age, if you had any idea that life wasn't going to work out for you, why would you even try that day? So I think we survived here because our ancestors were a little bit more optimistic than they needed to be.
It's funny you're saying that because I was thinking about all the people that don't think this way, and they're very depressed. The people that think of their future as, oh, I don't want to do that because this is
it's not worth it.
Yeah, it's
What's
not worth
the
it.
point?
And so they
What's
don't
the
even
use?
try things. Yeah.
How many works of art, right? How many businesses get started? How many families start to the point earlier because people are like, yeah, I'm going to do this and I'm going to do it well.
Yeah.
Yeah. So let's talk a little bit about this idea of, I've been working on what I call a taxonomy of singles, and it needs a better name, of course. But the idea is that not all singles are alike. First of all, it's an incredibly diverse group of people. So this is 18-year-old college kids to 88-year-old widows and everything in between.
Whoa, what do you have against 89 and up?
I was just trying to be cute. But and so they have different goals, and they think of their singleness in different ways. So I have in this taxonomy, I have 4 types of singles, and I haven't named the different types yet. And I welcome ideas for names from you and from the listeners. So feel free to message me if you have them. And
Whoopi, we know you have some ideas.
I have some ideas, but I'm not. I have one that I would.
I'm sorry. I'm talking to my friend Whoopi Goldberg right now, Pete, not you. I know she's listening, and she's going to want to be a guest, and she's going to have some great ideas for these categories.
And she's either a type 3 or type 4. So we'll see. There are 2 dimensions that divvy them up, but it's not equal. It's not a 2 by 2 in my behavioral science language. The first one is, do you see yourself as incomplete and wanting that other?
That one.
Right?
So you're on. Okay.
Or do you see yourself as complete as an individual, and you might or might not welcome?
Oh, hold on. Sorry, man.
No, you're the first one. I'm the second one.
Oh, really?
Do you
For
think
sure? You were just talking about you have this list of things that you want to accomplish.
Yeah, but
you feel like this is the thing you haven't checked off.
Oh,
yet.
in that
I
sense,
don't feel that way.
In that sense, yeah. But I don't feel. Yeah, but I don't feel incomplete as a person. Like I don't feel incomplete as a person that I need another half to make necessarily make me better.
So let me ask you this, Chester: if you were 89 years old,
89-year-old don't matter,
and you didn't get married, and you never had children, and you're on your deathbed, do you feel like, hey, my life was complete, I did it? Or do you feel like, man, I wish I would have had kids and maybe gotten married?
I don't know how to answer that. And this
First
is not
of all, you're giving him too much credit to make it to 89.
Yeah, that is true.
Solid point.
That is
solid
true.
point.
I'm surprised I made it past 27. I thought I was a better musician than this. But anyway, but I don't know. Look, I don't know. This is not a cop out of an answer, but there is a part of me that, at least in the last 3-4 years, I have gotten better and better and better at truly being more in the moment and less thinking about the future, less thinking about and being fulfilled with what is, just as a general sort of theme. Like, so I don't know how to necessarily answer that question. Like,
why don't I look at the other dimensions and we'll go through it. What we have just talked about is the difference between a type 1 and a type 2 through 4.
Got it.
So I would call type 1 a conventional single and 2 through 4 solos. Okay. And most single people at some point in their life, especially early on, probably were type 1s.
So one criteria is you do feel like to be fulfilled, you need to have this relationship. What did you say the second criteria was?
I haven't yet.
Okay.
And that is how you view what I call the relationship escalator. So the relationship escalator is the commonly accepted, highly valued relationship, at least among Western cultures, but nearly worldwide, not completely. There are cultures that deviate from it. And we know what that looks like. You date someone, you become sexually intimate, you define the relationship, you pair off, you merge your lives, your identity, your living arrangements, your finances, lifestyle, etc. Maybe you have some kids, and to death do you part. Right? That is the mark of a successful escalator relationship, is someone dies in the relationship.
Clutching the other one.
Ideally, yes. And so type 1s want that. Right? They want to be completed. I would call them hopeless romantics in that sense. Type 2s also want that. I might call them hopeful romantics. They don't see themselves as incomplete, but if the right person came along at the right time, they would be happy to step on the escalator and ride it to the end. Okay? to me, hearing you're one or two, depending on how you define your soloness.
Yeah, I understand. Yeah, I think I'd be lying to myself if I tried to jump into the group too. I think there is I do enjoy the idea of having that person.
But a two would too. I don't. So I.
Oh no, sure. So I guess I mean I'm more so. I'm more. It's not so much that I don't need. I do want it.
Okay.
I do want it. Yeah.
I mean, I think the big difference between category 1 and category 2, and why I think, Chester, you're probably more category 1, is the difference is category 2, if they don't get that escalator, just say no regrets. I think category 1, which is where I think you fit in, I think if you don't find that escalator, I think you might have some,
that's right. That's not wrong.
Yeah.
That's not wrong.
And this taxonomy is fluid, right? So there are times in life where you might be a 2 or a 3 or a 4. So a 3 is disinterested in the escalator. So they don't want to ride it. They don't really want any kind of romantic, intimate relationship in general. You might call these people loners. So Bella DePaulo, who I had on episode 2, calls them single at heart. You might call them solitaires. These are people who they are a unit. They are doing other things with their life. And as I said, this could be temporary or it could be forever, right? We've all turned the tap off, so to speak. We've all deleted the apps. We've all been like, I need to get through this project, this year, this whatever. We've all been burned. Not all, but many of us have been burned, have had major heartbreak, and just we're not interested in a relationship. We're not interested in seeking it. If it came knocking on the door, we would say thank you, but no thanks. And so type 3s. So it may be acute or chronic, so to speak. And now type 4s, I think, are in many ways, I think the most interesting ones. And you already alluded to this in your opening comments, Darwyn. And this is something that is now we're having a conversation more and more about these days. And that is a type 4 is interested in a relationship, but they're going to diverge in some systematic way from the escalator. Now, this could look, well, first of all, there's an infinite number of possibilities, but you can imagine, I'll give you a few scenarios. For example, and this is true of me, you're not interested in merging your lives. That is, you don't want to live with someone. So you may have an intimate relationship with someone, but they have a separate residence. So sometimes this is called in a partner or living apart together, for example. Perhaps it's one of the hallmarks of a relationship escalator relationship is it's high status. It is the most important adult-adult relationship in your life. Again, I'm reluctant to do that because I have precious friendships that I don't want to necessarily subvert for a relationship. It doesn't diminish the relationship, but it doesn't elevate it. It doesn't put it on a pedestal above all others. Perhaps it's polyamorous. So you have multiple romantic interests, not just one. Perhaps it is either and consensually non-monogamous. So you have multiple sexually intimate partners and so on and so forth, right? Like, so a type 4 is probably, the least conventional of the 4. They have that solo.
I just want to clarify. Type
Please.
3 is just, I'm going to be single.
That's right.
So the only bone I have to pick so far, because this sounds great and I love the way that you've categorized these, is I think number 3 should be number 4 and number 4 should be number 3. Because number 3 this is the opposite end of the spectrum. You are just going to be single. Number 1 on the far side of the spectrum is, no, I'm definitely going to get in a relationship. I think what you're describing as category 4 is just the more interesting, aggressive, unconventional version of number 2. So I think that 4 should be number 3 and 3 should be number 4.
I think that's a fair point, and I have gone back and forth with them. I have kept 4 as the unconventional solo because it's more interesting to finish with.
Sure, yeah.
Yeah,
So
it's the most complex.
That's the only reason.
But I am with you. I had the same sort of reaction to you when you started describing the 4th, because you're setting it up. It's like further, and then it was like you pull back.
I do.
And I think the way you should describe this moving forward, because I think you're onto something, and I think you're going to end up doing a TED Talk or other talks about this. You set it up with number one. Hey, we all know what this looks like.
We know this person.
This is the conventionally looking for their hubby, looking for their wifey. And we kind of know category 4, which is this is that conventional loner. They're not going to get with anyone. Maybe they're a hermit. They're just doing their own thing. What I'm here to talk with you today about is categories 2 and 3. And then you start with 2, and then 3 becomes your final because it's the most interesting, most elaborate, most nuanced category. And I understand it's also the most exciting to talk about.
Yes. It's a fair note. And this is not, I believe in talking through things and getting feedback and writing about it. Part of what has kept me, and I'm really not being defensive. I just want to explain this.
Does he sound defensive a little bit, Chester?
Has kept me
A little bit.
Just a little bit.
has
It's
kept me
okay.
before is I have a friend, Matt. So he was sort of a 1, then became a 2, but 2 wasn't working for him.
So he got some sleeve tattoos.
Yes. And he thought, I can't do it. I think I need to be a lone wolf.
Mm.
And then he met someone who said to him, why can't you have it all? And so he is having an unconventional. He has stepped off the relationship escalator with a woman, and they have a really unconventional by traditional standards. And so for me, like,
Gotcha.
it fits that little bit of story where you're like, you don't have to choose either or. You can find this in between.
Well, let's set up a poll for the listeners. Do you think
3 should be 4 and 4 should be 3? Before we continue, I want to tell you about our sponsor, Wax Crescent, a Boulder-based company that makes small batch candles, hand-poured. Founded by Kim Terabeel, a solo entrepreneur and contributor to the podcast, her candles are made with soy wax and infused with wonderful fragrances and essential oils. The candles are fabulously designed, and I use one nearly every day. Use code SOLO20 for 20% off your first order at waxcrescent.com. That's SOLO20 at waxcrescent, like crescent the moon.com. And gentlemen, don't worry. Kim has guy-friendly candles too, or as I like to call them, mandals. My favorites are Imagine and Birch. Thank you, Wax Crescent, and thank you, Kim, for sponsoring the podcast. Chester?
Sorry, I was like, I feel the pressure to say something, but I don't know if I have much to say. I like the way that it's put together. I don't know that I would be reaching to try and dissect it any.
Is it
anymore.
leaving out any singles, is my question.
Well, I think what you call group 4 and what Darwyn and I call group 3.
Thanks, guys.
Well played.
Sort of gathers the rest.
Yes. Yeah.
So,
Right.
no.
So like the Burning Man crowd fits in that
Yeah.
group.
Yeah,
Right.
and I think it goes without saying. I would assume that it people can bounce around this scale, so it's not like you can graduate to a different. Not graduate's the wrong word, but you can move around 1 to 4. So no, I think it encompasses everything, and it's interesting to have the conversation because I'm like, God damn it, I am number 1.
And I don't, and again, I don't think this is without judgment. But it's important to know. I feel like
it is, but there's also something about creating this creating a goal or creating something that makes you feel like without it there is an incompleteness. Like that's not the most stoic sort of place to be.
Mm-hmm.
Do you know what I mean? Like that's not. I would prefer to be in a place where whatever level I is in line with being content with with everything that I have right now as it is. As that's something I'm trying to get better at in general.
Yeah. Well, to your credit and to Darwyn's point, I believe that you can make this happen if you wanted it to. What I feel bad for are the people who are truly hopeless.
Mm.
Oh yeah.
That is the people who want it. And there's something about them that either they're not appealing enough, which I say that sadly, or they lack the right temperament, the ability to do relationships. And so their attempts are going to be fraught. I'm most fascinated by loneliness in terms, like as a storyteller, the thing that I always grabs me the most is the concept of loneliness. And I think about this group of people quite a bit and what that
it sounds like we're coming from such a privileged place because to no fault of our own, we live in a culture where you're right. It's not off the table for us, and so it is off the table for a huge group of people.
And because of that, what I often talk about with my listeners, actually anyone who'll listen to me, is the value of relationships more generally, and in particular friendships. Which brings us to the next platter. I've been working on, and I've talked about it in a previous episode called Solo Thoughts 5, this idea of what makes a good life. How should we be thinking about living a good life, living a remarkable life, dare I say? We've got categories again. There are 2 categories with 3 elements to each of those. And so let me put on my professorial hat for a moment. You could think of this as an alternative to Maslow's hierarchy of needs. Everybody knows Maslow's hierarchy of needs. It's deeply flawed, but yet has been a very valuable model by which people can think about the goodness of their lives. What it has in common with it is this idea of what are the foundational things that we need in order to be able to thrive. And that really is one of the most important elements to Maslow. And to me, it's these three basic concepts. One is your health, to have good health. It's very hard to thrive without good health. To have good wealth, that is to be in a situation where you are at the very least, maybe you don't have to be rich, but you have to not be impoverished. And the research on this is incredibly clear. Moving people out of extreme poverty has an incredible benefit to the goodness of their life, to their life satisfaction. And then the last one, it doesn't rhyme, unfortunately, is what I would call your team, your relationships, both personal and professional, and how incredibly important those are, even for those loners. And I'm a big proponent, and anybody who listens to the pod regularly knows how important I think friendships are in that kind of way. And so you were talking about loneliness, and we'll pause there with this I call the foundation. Loneliness is an enormous problem. And it is a problem for both singles and non-singles. Like, loneliness is not really about your relationship status per se. It's about your desires and then your ability to meet those desires. So I came across a really interesting survey, and just very briefly, close friends are a great way to combat loneliness. And the data on that is clear. But this was a survey center on American life. And there are sort of 2 striking things that I've noticed in the literature so far. And I think that they're intertwined, although I'm not sure. One is Americans specifically, but people in general, at least in industrial countries, are having less sex than they used to.
That's a shame.
It's a tragedy, I think, that they're having less sex, because one of the most joyous, pleasurable things that you can do. And it seems peculiar that it's happening because in some ways you have more access to it. You certainly have better birth control than ever before. You've got these apps that you can connect to people and so on, and yet people are having less sex. The other one is that friendship is on the decline, both with men and women, but especially men.
That makes complete sense.
Go on.
Well, just from being 38, I grew up. There are no cell phones. Internet's not even really being used in the same. You might as well just say there was no internet because no one's using it, right? Not in the same kind of way that it's being used today. You have to meet people. You have to look people in the eye. You have to create real bonds. Mm-hmm. Whereas today, you can find a different version of that while staying behind a screen, and I would assume create a false version of that doesn't actually fulfill you in a real meaningful way. So that makes complete sense to me. I mean, I have friendships like you met Trevor. I've known Trevor since I was 6 years old. Like I have, it's just a completely different way of growing up.
Yeah. So I'm just going to cite a few things here. So this is.
For the audience at home, Pete has like all these like spreadsheets and charts printed out. There's like a pile of research that he's going through at the moment here.
It's true. I can't help myself.
It's impressive.
He looks like was it Ross Perot?
Yeah. And by the way, he opted for the color printing. He went all out for this. This could have been a black and white chart, but no, he went full color here.
I don't think Perot had
I've got
color
some bar charts. So this is comparing 1990 to 2021. And in 1990, less than 2% of women said they had no close friends. That number is now 10%. Now, this
Sorry, what were the numbers again?
so this is in a 30-year time, the percentage of women who say they have no close friends went from like 2% to 10%.
Oh, wow. Yeah. Okay.
So 5-fold increase. Same 5-fold increase. Men was 3%, now 15%.
Wow.
Now, of course, what I don't know yet is what the breakdown is for single versus married people. Married people have fewer friends than single people. But the rates of marriage, if anything, have gone down, not up. So you can't explain it in that kind of way. That, in my opinion, is as tragic as the drop, actually more tragic than the drop in sex.
Well, and you say married people have less friends? Is what you're saying?
Yes.
That just makes logical sense too, though, doesn't it?
Yeah, of course.
They're spending time with their loved one. I mean,
that's right.
Okay.
Now, I think there is a phenomenon that happens. So this is, of course, really disturbing with regard to the men, because we know that when men are suffering, they make the world a worse place, because men tend to act aggressively when they're suffering. They act out against the world. Women tend to act out against themselves. But in any case, this is male or female. It doesn't matter to me so much. But I want to highlight this because I think, again, all of this push, all of this focus, I can see Darwyn's upset by this. All of this push and focus on relationships, on bonding with this one other person, ignores this powerful force in our lives, which is friendship. There aren't enough. I mean, there's I Love You Man. You know, that's your rom-com equivalent of a friendship story.
Great flick.
Yes. But where are those? I mean, you create love songs. You create songs. What is your ratio of love songs to friendship songs?
Yeah, where's your bro songs?
Yeah, dude.
I have a few friendship songs. I'll send it to you.
That would be great.
Okay, good.
Yeah.
All right.
Yes.
I want to bring this up because you two do friendship incredibly well. And I want to get your reaction to this. And then I also want your best practices because I know it takes work.
Yeah.
I mean, I would just say, Pete, first of all, I agree with you that the drop off in sex, which is unfortunate, and I imagine there's a lot of men and women that's been unhealthy for, but that compared to the drop in or the worsening chasm of people who feel like they don't have a close friend, that is just heartbreaking. And to think that there are 15% of men and 10% of women who don't feel like there's anyone in their life that they're close to, I'm still trying to wrap my head around that. It just means when you're in, you could walk down the hallway and you're going to, after every, 10th person or 7th person, meet someone who they have nobody in their life that they really feel connected to. To your 3 categories of, I don't know what the sort of framing was of the categories, but I know that I have very similar categories, which I think for happiness, it's what you mentioned was health. To me, I think of that as a connection to yourself, whether that's being mental, spiritual, or in physical fitness. That is a healthy connection. The healthy connection to the universe or God or even the literal physical environment. And then that third group that we're talking about right now, connection to other humans, because we are a social species. And I say that as someone who I identify as an introvert, and I do need to have space to myself, but I need people like you guys in my life. And I'll let Chester sort of respond to this before we go into best practices, but I can't imagine what my life would be like without really strong platonic friendships, both with women and especially with men.
I'm not where I am in my life without friends. Like, I'm half the person I am without my friends. Like, I have no doubt in my mind. All the great things that I've made or attempted to make doesn't happen. My good health, my opportunities, what I've learned. So yeah, I've always seen friends as a cheat code to, in some ways, making up for troubles with family and also challenges in my romantic life.
Yeah. Again, I usually hate the word privilege as I'm throwing it around so much tonight, but I've always felt very, very privileged in this very specific thing. Like, I've always felt I've had really good friendships.
Why do you use the word privilege?
Because I think that it is there are enough variables around this where it's to no fault of my own that I was born a certain way.
I see. That's
I
fair.
see. I totally see what Chester's. Look, Chester, you're handsome, you're charming, you have high IQ, high EQ. No, seriously. It's people are going to want to be friends with you, but even before you've went through your path of development at the get-go, I'm sure people were openly friendly to you. And I think there's a lot of people that, whether it's IQ, EQ, or whatever the case
Look,
may
I looked
be,
like Howdy Doody when I was a child. No one wanted to be my friend.
yeah, but you had enough IQ and EQ that you could rise to the occasion and become this fascinating professor and author and world traveler that, celebrities and comedians go out of their way to have drinks with, that most men won't be able to go through that same trajectory or that path. And so I think, Chester, your point about this, there being some
that's fair.
privilege
I take
here
it
is
back.
fair.
I withdraw my comment.
Well, and I only preface it with that because I just, I don't know that I could truly, empathize with and understand what it is to not have friendships and be so accessible.
Mm-hmm.
I can see how tragic it would be to not have this safety net. I mean, the safety net for me, like you said, it's a crazy, crazy safety. It is the safety net to have as a human being on this planet. I mean, I know that if I were to lose everything, all I'd have to do is swallow my ego, and I would.
How many people could you?
I could get a loan. I could get a loan from a friend right now if shit hit the fan. You know what I mean? Like I could.
That's what I know about Chester. If he was exactly in this situation where he's lost everything, I know for a fact in less than one day, Chester would have a house on the beach he would get to stay in as long as he wanted to. He would have access to a car. He would have a job given to him. His meals would be taken care of. But it's because he's given so much to many people for so long. And again, that's the beautiful part about these relationships. But you have to imagine if you're not in the place of privilege, as Chester sort of puts it, and you are in dire straits and you haven't built these great relationships, you must feel exceptionally lonely. And by the way, this is a big part of the work that we do with the homeless, where we talk a lot about, for them, when we call our brothers and sisters who are living on the streets within our organization, we refer to them as clients. My group is called Miracle Messages. And often as we have these really powerful conversations with them, and we'll often ask them, like, when did you really feel like you were homeless or unhoused? And they'll never say, well, it's when I lost my job or even when I lost my home. They'll say it's when I lost contact with my family, whether it be my father or my mother or my husband or my brother. And it's what we describe as relational poverty. And really, Chester, what we're describing that the three of us have in this room is we're often on the other end of the spectrum where we have relational riches that put us in that sort of relational 1%.
Yeah. Yes. That's a great way to put it, by the way. Because, I feel way more rich, and I think it's a much more important rich.
One of my more emotional moments on the podcast happened when this topic came up once before. I did a series on making remarkable friends. And there's this longitudinal study of men. It's been around for 50 plus years. And one of the questions they ask is, do you have someone you can call in the middle of the night if you're sick or afraid? And that's a powerful question. Yeah. If the answer is no, that person also has other profound problems in their life. Most notably, profound health problems, oftentimes. But think about. I just want to point out how powerful that question is. It's not who you can call if you're sick. It's who you can call if you're afraid.
Yeah.
And think about, like, that's already a taboo topic for most men. You're not allowed to be afraid, right? You're not allowed to be afraid. And so then, if you can't talk to someone about being afraid, you really are relationally impoverished in that sense. And, I bring this up because I do think this is something we don't talk about because men are unpopular right now. And I just don't think there's enough of a discourse. So to help people, you two do it well. As you see it, what are the basics for someone who goes, crap, I'm in that 15% and it can't continue?
Well, no. Again, it's like I said, I don't know that I'm qualified to dissect that one properly because I don't know what that is like, and so I'm looking at it from the outside, and I don't know. I can see the tragedy of it, but I don't know how to deal. I wouldn't know how to, because it's easy to start saying things like, "Oh, start a men's group," but like, okay, how do you do that if you're somebody that doesn't have necessarily the social skills? And like, how do you start a men's group?
Yeah, I want to say this. This is not static. I think you're right. There is a certain percentage, because 30 years ago, 3% of men had no close friends, but now 15% don't have it. So that's contextual.
I think, and I'm trying to like deconstruct what I think Chester's doing right, and also thinking about the parallels that I do right in my life, and Pete, that you do well in your life. And I think if you want to to build a great relationship and to become a good friend, you have to start with yourself. And I think for starters, if we think about what we all want in a relationship, which is we just want to feel like we belong.
Mm-hmm.
I think the biggest issue that most men in America deal with is they do what they have to do to fit in, but they don't actually feel like they belong. And the distinction is, to fit in, you do the things that everybody else tells you should do. And perhaps in the example of this podcast, you try to pursue a marriage because that's what other people told you should do to fit in. Or you should be the sort of person who never admits that you're afraid, because that's what a man is told to do to fit in.
Mm-hmm.
For someone like me, and I think this is probably true for both of you as well, to feel like I belong, it means I have to be some version of my actual authentic self and know that you're okay with that, warts and all.
Mm-hmm.
And that I might admit that sometimes I'm sad, or admit that sometimes I'm afraid, or admit that maybe I don't know that I want to be married, and that you guys are going to be okay with that and still embrace me for who I am. So when I'm trying to like envision what are the building blocks to get there as a human who's surrounded by other humans who accept you for who you are, I think first and foremost, you have to stop judging other people. And I think the less you judge other people, the less they're going to judge you. Number two, you have to take some time out of your day and your week and learn to give without expecting a single thing in return. And don't keep a scoreboard in the back of your mind of, what did I do for Chester? And what did Pete do for me? And how am I going to make things equal? Because that makes things transactional. And in a transactional world, there is no real true connection. So I think that's step number two. Beyond that, I just think you have to start going out of your way to check in on one another and not make it about you. And I think the more you start to elevate yourself in that way, the greater likelihood you're going to start to surround yourself with other people who feel the same way. They're trying to think about one another, not just themselves. And the more you build that sort of relationship, I think the greater likelihood that you're going to feel like you have someone that you can call when you feel like you're sad or sick and afraid. But I think, Chester, you're right. It's tough to think of the foundational steps if you haven't already built this platform as a human. How you all of a sudden just jump in from a place where you felt like you were by yourself to now a place where you have these healthy connections. I just think this is a long marathon people need to undertake.
So this I can second. I think that my hesitancy, sorry, the bourbon's kicking in, to respond to that question without feeling like I'm being, pedantic or like, I
appreciate that you have reservations about giving advice.
But I would say that I would think that one of the major variables is if somebody is struggling to build those strong relationships. I'm not saying this is always the case, but I would assume that one of the biggest variables is just that. Some way that I think looking inward and working on yourself and becoming the most authentic version of yourself. Something that I really started to see in the last few years, observe in the last few years, and understand is there's that fun sort of paradox with the idea of like if you think of how to be cool or like what you think is
the uncoolest thing you can do.
Yeah, it's actually having the adverse effect, because it's the person that is not thinking about that is just being. It is one of the most attractive traits. Easier said than done, right? Like to get out of your head and just be yourself, much easier said than done. But I think that becomes more easy for you to do as you do work on yourself. And work on yourself comes in all these different forms. It's a whole other conversation.
Yes.
Well, but that is not, funneled down to a couple sentences. But yeah, I second everything you had said earlier about that. I think that's a huge key part of building friendships you have to start working on yourself as being the best version of yourself, and you'll attract.
And by the way, I think the other way to think about this would be, what are the traits of someone who is not going down this path to building healthy relationships? What are they going to look like? And I think some examples that come to mind is, number one, they're going to have the same exact opinions and worldview today that they had 10 years ago, and they haven't changed one bit. I think they're going to have a lack of commitment to their physical health. I think they are going to be quite comfortable with destroying their local environment, whether that being, their own personal domicile or the, physical environment around them. I think these are very small examples, but these are traits in somebody that I think is probably going to have broken or fractured relationships. And I think, Chester, to the point you're making, this requires exercise, daily exercise. You don't just all of a sudden get to squat 500 pounds emotionally and through a relationship. You have to work up to it, and you have to not get tripped up that you don't have the relationship you want immediately. You have to be okay with slow growth.
No, that's right. You don't get to read The Untethered Soul or Power of Now.
Which might help, by the way. Those might be a good step, but they're not the whole journey.
No, absolutely. I think those are the kind of books that have helped put me on a certain path to working on myself. Anyway.
If you're someone who doesn't have close friends, it didn't happen overnight. I want to second two things that you two have identified. One is, to make friends is an act of vulnerability, right? So it's not just you have to try, but you have to be willing to try and fail. And it is only going to really work if you are your authentic self. Because friends, they can figure out who's a phony.
Oh, 100%. Yeah. You see right through it. Yeah.
Right. 100%. So you have to, and so even the act of calling someone and saying, I am scared, is an act of vulnerability that's there. And you can build friendships on these things. I had a friend, we were acquaintances, and she called me one day. She's like, I just got into a car accident and I just need a hand. And I was like, where are you? She's like, yeah, I'll be there in 10 minutes. And like that kickstarted our relationship in a way that is, who knows what would have happened. Maybe we would still be as close as we are. But that was like, she was willing to pick up the phone and call me, and I answered it and jumped on it.
You know what makes me feel the furthest, the most distanced from people that otherwise would be friends in my life is when I get the opposite of the phone call you just described, Pete. When somebody calls me up and just like, hey, just want to check in, family's great, work's great, everything's great. Okay, man, gotta go. I'm just like, I don't know you at all. I have no idea what you're actually going through. If it's just as pedestrian as you described, I'm happy for you, but I doubt that it is.
Yes.
And if anything, this tells me you don't actually trust me.
Yeah, the good friends call you with their troubles and
everything
and
Give
their
me everything.
successes. Yeah. That's right. Yeah, I lost the other thing that I was going to say.
I'm sure it was mind blowing.
It was brilliant. It was absolutely brilliant.
It was the entire point.
Oh yeah, I do what it is, and it's this, Darwyn. You were talking about what I describe as a correlation. Men who can't answer yes to that question about a call in the middle of the night have all these health problems. That suggests that the arrow goes in one direction. I suspect the arrow also goes in the other direction. If you're not taking care of yourself, if you're not trying to, if your house is a pigsty, if you know what I mean, if you're not involved in the community, it's that much harder to create those connections. Because we want to be, there's a saying is like, the best predictor of how good someone is the goodness of their 5 closest friends. Right. And so, you want people around you who are going to elevate you. And so I think that those ideas are powerful ideas. And I think they start the initial steps for someone to start to try, which I think is an important thing. And then the last one, you already identified it, Chester, is like, you got to put down your damn phone and you got to sit across someone. You got to go for a walk with them or a hike with them or share a meal.
Yeah.
Or pick up the phone and not send a text.
Chester has a great habit, and I say this as someone who's a bit of an introvert, so these are a little bit draining for me. But Chester does not text you so much as he FaceTimes you.
Oh, is that right?
And he'll FaceTime you even when he's out doing something interesting, or he might have company or whatever, and you do feel like he's bringing you into that moment and he's sharing that energy with you.
FaceTime is significantly better than text.
It's intimate. It's so much more intimate.
Yeah. And that's sorry, my mind went to a story that's not that great, not worth sharing.
That's fine.
Yeah. So
I think the last habit that I think more men in America need to adopt. And I learned this from my father, who had a very, very healthy relationship with his father, and they really loved one another. But my dad's biggest regret was that he never told his dad, I love you.
Oh, thank you for saying this.
And even though they knew they loved one another, they didn't explicitly say it, and my dad always regretted that. So my dad, who was this tough, roughneck, former athlete, truck driver, would still go out of his way to tell me that he loves me. And this is something that I pass on to my good male friends.
Mm-hmm.
And Pete and Chester, I've told you guys many, many times, I love you. And I want to tell you right now, I love both of you. And it's never going to be hard for me to tell you I love you. And I have other friends in my life that the first time I told them, or perhaps the first 100 times I told them I love you, I think it kind of stunned them a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
But over time, it feels right to say, I believe it 100%. And if you say it to a friend that you do authentically love, even if their first reaction is just to be like, wow, that's kind of different, I think eventually they'll come around. And so I feel like more men should go out of their way to tell their closest male friends, I love you.
Well, okay. Well, first of all, I love you too, and I know you know that.
I love you too, Darwyn.
We gotta at least get this out first before you.
Yeah, let's just say you can't drop those three words on us and not expect it reciprocated.
But in a similar fashion, and I know I've sent you this at least once or twice, but something that I try to do, and it usually happens when I am a little drunk, is just send a random. If you have a thought about somebody, if you have a thought about one of your friends, and it's a good thought, there's just no reason not to send it. So
Totally.
I've done this a few times with a lot of my friends where I'll be like, you know what, man, that guy's a great drummer, or like, oh, you know what, I'm just like, hey man, I was just thinking about you. I was thinking about how fucking amazing you are at drumming. I just thought I'd just send this note your way.
I think you should text Garrett right now, and you should text this to Garrett right now.
Well, you know what's funny is I was thinking that because I have sent that text to, that was the example I was thinking of. But
Chester's friend Garrett is an incredible drummer, and you know what? We're both going to text him after this and let him know.
Sure. That's a good idea. I think I was thinking of that exact thing because I do remember him responding and letting me know that it was a needed message that day. And you never know if it's needed or not, you know, but
it's always appreciated.
It's always
even
appreciated.
If it's not needed.
Yeah. And
your worst case scenario is you have made them smile. Your best case scenario is you may have turned around their week.
Yeah, exactly.
Absolutely.
Exactly.
So why not do it?
Yeah. Exactly. So I try to do it more and more. Like I said, it usually happens when I'm drunk, but you know, nonetheless, I think because when you're drunk, you just feel less of the awkwardness of it a little
inhibited.
bit. Yeah. Yeah, I think that's a good habit to create. I'm
so glad you added that addendum, Darwyn, because it's something that I've started doing, and it's a relatively recent phenomenon. The other version of I love you is I will sometimes tell people that I'm thankful I met them.
Yeah, I love that.
You know, and so I just let them, I was like, I'm just so thankful I met you. And sometimes I say, I'm very happy I forced my friendship on you. That's what I did with Darwyn. I forced my friendship on him.
It felt very natural.
It's interesting because the truth is the I love you has such a spectrum of meaning for a lot of people. And so, just those words can.
But they're powerful words. Look,
they are.
Homophobia
is real for our age group.
It's really bad. It's bad for people who are homosexuals, but it's also bad for heterosexuals.
Like I said this the other day. I was acknowledging, if you're being brutally honest with yourself, so we were raised on 80s and 90s movies that are riddled with homophobia. I mean, it's just riddled.
It even goes beyond that. I just recently started rewatching Entourage from the beginning, which is, 2007.
It's not that old.
No, it's not that old. No.
It's amazing because you have these four characters who clearly are supposed to love one another, but they're so afraid of giving off any sort of homosexual energy. It is cringeworthy. Just say you love one another.
That's
you
right.
live in the same house. Your entire lives are tethered. All you're trying to do is make one another succeed. It's okay to say you love each other.
It's true.
Yeah. Are you allowed to say, I don't want to say anything vulgar on
you already have.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
well, you can bleep it out. My ultimate favorite, yeah, you're right. My ultimate favorite moment of just pure homophobia coming out of the 80s movies that we all grew up on was Teen Wolf, Michael J. Fox. He's in the garage He's about to tell Styles for the first time that he's a wolf, that he is a wolf. And so Styles, he's looking for something in his garage. I forget what. Styles says, he picks up on him being a little shifty and weird. He's like, dude, you're not about to tell me. He uses a word that we can't use. Mm-hmm. But he's like, essentially he's like, you're not gay, are you? Right? And he's like, no, of course not. Yeah, are you kidding me? No. He's like, I'm a wolf. Yeah, I don't know if he actually says I'm a wolf. But the point is that they were so scared. Like, this character is so scared of his buddy thinking that he might be gay. That is crazier than his buddy realizing that he's a werewolf. Yeah. That's right. 80s movies, 90s movies were riddled with this sort of tone. And it would be completely disingenuous of me to not acknowledge that that's going to have effect on my psyche, like my thoughts around things. Of course, I'm not, don't have any of those real feelings about homosexuality or anything like that. Of course not. But to not acknowledge that there is a massive effect that a culture like that is going to have on an entire generation would be disingenuous. Like, it's there.
And the unintended consequence of that is that men are afraid to be close to one another and afraid to verbalize or communicate that they feel a closeness because of the fear of, I might come off as being gay, which is just so ridiculous. But it's true. It's there. The undercurrent's there.
Who the first president of the United States was to enter the office being pro same-sex marriage?
No.
Donald Trump. People forget when Barack Obama became president, he was against same-sex marriage. This is how close.
It is a recent flip.
This is how recent.
Yes.
You couldn't make that political move where you had to be against same-sex marriage to run for office because the nation hadn't flipped yet. That's how close we are to this feeling toward it in general. Yeah. I know that's more complicated. It's not just about,
Certainly. And the other thing is, the other side of this is there was this oppression, which was front and center, and then there weren't good role models, right? So I'm just flipping through my Rolodex of movies from the 80s and 90s about that detail close male friendships that aren't these weird action movie kind of things. And the one I came up with? Shawshank Redemption.
Oh, interesting.
Right? It in many ways, that story is a story of friendship as much as it's a story about revenge and survival.
Yeah. And Timothy Robbins and Morgan Freeman's characters specifically. Right. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Two people who shouldn't be friends become friends.
Oh, wow. It's interesting. I mean, you're really putting the whole end of the movie is him getting to the point of feeling lonely, like seeing the other guy that was there that committed suicide that was in the apartment, and then finding his friend, off in the middle of nowhere.
But, in Ziwatanejo.
Exactly. Yeah.
That's right. Yeah. No, there it is.
It's like Eminem and Dr. Dre. If I loved you more, I might be gay. And when I'm feeling down, you know just what to say. You my homie, yeah, you know me. And if you ever need a wingman, I'd let any girl blow me off. 'Cause you're more important than the rest. I confess, I'm a mess if I'm not hanging with my BFF. You know it's true, you my male boo. Now sing the chorus.
Thank you for listening to Solo, the single person's guide to a remarkable life. For more about our guests and show notes, go to petermcgraw.org. Please subscribe and share with your single friends.